In the second part of the demo, we'll use ArgoCD ApplicationSet to deploy applications to multiple clusters. Let's look at the example. In these examples, we have some generators, but specifically we'll use a list generator and git generator directory example. Let's start with list generator. Now, in the list example, we have a custom resource with kind application set, and we're trying to deploy this particular application, ArgoCD application, into two clusters, engineering dev and engineering prod. I'll be commenting out this engineering prod resource pretty soon. Now, one thing to notice is the template part is pretty similar to an ArgoCD application. And here, some values are dynamically injected. For example, cluster, these values would be coming from here and here, and URL value is coming from the URL fields. One other thing to notice is if you don't have a namespace, you can use this flag, create namespace equals true for the remote clusters. The first thing to do when you're deploying to multiple clusters is adding the remote cluster to ArgoCD server. First, I'll log into ArgoCD server. Let me go to ArgoCD server by clicking this link, which will open up the ArgoCD server UI. And we'll use the default admin account with the admin password. To find the admin password, if you're using OpenShift, go to Workloads, Secrets from OpenShift GitOps namespace, and you can get the OpenShift GitOps cluster secret. And that will get us logged in to the cluster. From here, if I see clusters, I can see there's only in cluster. That means where ArgoCD is installed. There's no remote cluster added. In order to add the remote cluster, we have to add it through ArgoCD CLI. You cannot do that from ArgoCD UI. So let me log in to ArgoCD server from the command line. I'll do ArgoCD login. And ArgoCD is pretty picky about the URL, so I have to remove the HTTPS part. The username admin and the default admin password. All right, so once you're logged in, we have to log into the remote cluster. So this is the remote cluster. Let me see if I'm already logged into the remote cluster. Yes, I'm already logged in to the remote cluster, as you can see. So we have to add this context, ArgoCD cluster add, and then context. So once we do that, our service account, cluster role, and cluster role binding will be created into the remote cluster that will let ArgoCD manage resources in the remote clusters. I already executed this step beforehand. That's why it says it already exists. Let's start with the list generator example. In this YAML, we have an ApplicationSet custom resource called guestbook, and we'll be deploying this application in two different clusters. One is the cluster where ArgoCD is installed, and the other is a remote server. I'll uncomment these two lines shortly. So let's copy this YAML. You can create this ApplicationSet custom resource from the CLI, but if you're using OpenShift GitOps operator, you can create this ApplicationSet from the console. So we hit create ApplicationSet button, and we paste the custom resource here. Now, one thing to notice is because you're creating this application set in a different namespace than OpenShift GitOps, guestbook-ns, you'll have to create this guestbook-ns namespace beforehand with a specific flag called managed by OpenShift GitOps. So here's that namespace. You have to create this beforehand. Notice this specific label field. So I have already done that. I'll uncomment these two lines and also update the URL field. So let me go back to my ArgoCD web UI, and from cluster, I can see the remote cluster, and I'll update this value, which is engineering prod. And let's create this application set. So once I create that under application, I can see these two ArgoCD applications are being created. One in the cluster where ArgoCD is deployed, and one is in the remote cluster. Both apps are synced and healthy. If I try to delete one of these applications, you'll see that the applications will be out of sync shortly, but ApplicationSet controller will recreate this application because these applications were created using ApplicationSet. In contrast, if you created these two applications separately using ArgoCD, you'd be able to individually delete these applications. So that was the list generator example demo. I have to delete these two applications from here using ApplicationSet, and now I'll be able to delete this application. Now let's look at the Git generator directory examples. For the Git generator directory, I have 3 different applications in the same repository: a Helm, a JSON, and a customized application. And similarly, I have to create 3 namespaces beforehand because these 3 applications are being deployed in 3 different namespaces. So this specific label allows OpenShift GitOps or ArgoCD to be able to create resources in those namespaces. I have already created these 3 namespaces. Now let's look at the example for Git generator directory. I'll create application set from the YAML view. And here you can see that path.base name, which is all the folders in this specific path, which are the 3 applications: Guestbook Helm, Guestbook JSON, and Guestbook Customize. These will be the 3 ArgoCD applications that will be created. Let's create this application set, and we should see 3 applications will be created. I did not have auto sync enabled for these 3 applications, so I'll have to manually sync this application. Once I click on sync, these 3 applications should be synced. Similarly to the previous example, if I try to manually delete any of this application, ArgoCD application set will create this application again. So that was the demo for Git generator directory, and you can practice on your own on these generators, or if you want to test out matrix generator, that example is in this repo, ArgoCD application set demo. And if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you can see that I have an example for matrix generator as well. And this repository is based on vanilla Kubernetes.